Welcome back to Weather Now, and joining us is Houston Chronicle meteorologist Justin Ballard back in the studio here talking about this week's 100-degree temperatures, which might feel even hotter than that, as we all know. Welcome back to the show, Justin.
Thanks for having me. We've only had one day, but I think we're going to add to that by the end of the week.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about the science about how we measure temperatures and why sometimes our car thermometers say something different than what we're saying here on TV.
And if you're like me, and probably you, let's face it, you've got a thermometer at home,
Absolutely.
and it's also skewing a little warmer. So all in all, we're talking about why we measure temperature in the shade. Official measurements at Bush, at Hobby, at any of those local airports here across Southeast Texas are taken in the shade. And there's a very good reason for that. There's a multitude of sort of influences that can influence or affect how warm a reading is. And I've got a nice little graphic to kind of walk us through that
Yeah,
here.
and so we have standardized the way we collect temperatures so that we have kind of equal footing when we're looking at where temperatures are measured across the world.
Correct. Whether you're getting a temperature measured in Houston or Tokyo or Paris, this is kind of why we've got this in a box. So let's talk about why an average house can be warmer. You see that temperature there, 97 degrees. It's often in direct sunlight. It's hard to get the lighting just right there. And dark colors can also absorb more heat. You see that dark green shading on that house. That, of course, adds to some of the heat, while white paint reduces heat absorption. Finally, and this is an important one, you know, especially in Houston where you've got so many buildings around, nearby houses or concrete can add radiant heat to that thermometer. So it skews that thermometer much warmer than what the Stevenson box, which is what this kind of device is called, is placed about 4 to 6 feet above the ground in an open field, again painted white. So as many ways possible to reduce the kind of influence of external factors. That's why we keep that thermometer in a box shaded.
And there are some very specific parameters about which these thermometers must be cited for those official readings.
Exactly, and that shouldn't come as a shock. If you're a science person, you know you've got to have very particular, very exacting sort of standards.
Right, so when we talk about the heat index or the feels like temperature, that's the measurement in the shade. What happens when you're in the sun?
Well, let's talk about it. First of all, I've got a map showing current temperatures. So most of us are in the low 90s right now, 91 in Houston.
Typical Houston heat.
Very, very typical. Could certainly be a lot worse, we know. 90 in Humboldt, Tomball, 93 in Katy, but let's factor in that humidity. And again, all of these temperatures that you're seeing across your screen, 103 in Sugar Land, 105 in Katy, 98 in Houston, cool, if you want to call it that, you know, are taken in the shade. But what happens when you're in direct sunlight is you can tack on about 10 to 15 degrees to that temperature that you see there. So that 98 very quickly gets 110 higher when you're standing in direct sunlight.
And you can feel it. You can feel the sun
really
cooking your skin. And also it matters the surface of the ground that you're standing over.
It
if
really
you're over
does.
a grassy lawn or field versus, let's say, in a paved concrete or asphalt parking lot.
And we've talked about areas of Houston that have, you know, more concrete than others. 101 in Houston's that forecast temperature at 4 p.m. or that forecast feels like temperature, I should say. So tack on again 10 to 15 degrees, and that's what you kind of feel if you're standing in direct sunlight. Tomorrow we'll do it all over again, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, temperatures topping out. Feels like temperatures again topping out near 99, 98, 100, 102. You know, the whole gamut between 98 and 102 is going to be pretty common as we get Tuesday into Wednesday. And that may even be a little conservative.
And the great thing about tomorrow is that the humidity is expected to drop at the peak heat of the day. So we won't have much of a heat index to deal with. And that's one reason why we haven't had many heat advisories so far this year. I checked back, we had middle of May, we had a one heat advisory for Harris County and haven't had one since.
We haven't, but you know, that certainly is not the case for everyone. There are millions of people under, you know, heat alerts, whether it's heat advisories or extreme heat warnings anywhere from the Midwest. You see that map here all the way in New England, Boston. You know, I was just in North Carolina for a few weeks and it was hot. I was like, I've got to get back to Houston where it's cooler. Like, what is going on? So you see all of those heat alerts stretching from the Midwest to the Southeast, back up to New England. Houston out of that for now, but I have a sneaking feeling we'll be seeing some heat alerts.
Eventually.
Probably by the end of the week, if not later than that.
It's got to happen at some point before the end of summer. Okay, so obviously at this time of year, our concern goes towards those who work outside for a living, or for maybe those high school kids that are going back to do band practices and football practices, the people that are outdoors doing that stressful, strenuous activity. That can be a real concern.
It really can, and we can talk about the wet bulb globe temperature, but we won't today.
We'll save that for another day.
You know, stay hydrated, drinking plenty of water, stay in the shade if possible, or at least take frequent breaks in the shade, or air conditioning, better yet.
Yeah, so those are some of the tips, obviously, and it doesn't matter if we're under a heat advisory or not.
No.
Even in this kind of heat, you can get heat stroke, heat exhaustion. That's all fair game.
Basically, June through September is dangerous heat in Houston, regardless of whether we have an alert.
Okay. Thanks so much for your time, Justin. We appreciate you.
Thank you.